Dozens of airstrikes pounded Hamas positions as tanks advanced to conquer and hold territory in the Strip. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The stepped-up military operations in Gaza are continuing, with ground operations underway in the north and south of the enclave. Airstrikes on Hamas positions reportedly killed at least 130 people overnight. The IDF hit some 670 Hamas targets over the past week to support Gideon's Chariots, the new ground operation aimed at achieving operational control in parts of the enclave.
צה"ל בהובלת פיקוד הדרום פתח במבצע מרכבות גדעון בהתאם להנחיית הדרג המדיני. אנחנו יוצאים למבצע כדי לממש את כל מטרות המלחמה בעזה. השבת החטופים ומיטוט שלטון החמאס. חשוב להדגיש, אנחנו נדע להתאים את עצמנו לכל התפתחות. אנחנו עוברים שלב בלחימה, ממבצע עוז וחרב למבצע מרכבות גדעון.
The army confirmed that part of the military plan includes the moving of Gazan population from north to south.
המבצע הוא חלק ממלחמת חרבות ברזל. במהלך המבצע נגביר ונרחיב את השליטה המבצעית ברצועת עזה, תוך ביטור הרצועה והנעת האוכלוסייה לשם הגנתה, בכל המקומות בהם נפעל.
The IDF issued evacuation warnings for Khan Yunis suburb of Deir el-Balach after Hamas rocket fire was directed at Kisufim. In a post, the IDF published a map of the area to be evacuated and said it was a final warning before the IDF carries out strikes there. Amid the renewed IDF offensive, the army is pushing back on unconfirmed reports of a hostage rescue operation in Khan Yunis this morning. Gazan media claims that an IDF special forces team killed a senior terrorist, Ahmed Sarkhan, in a Khan Yunis raid. The troops reportedly entered the city in disguise, including some dressed as women. Prime Minister Netanyahu has ordered the immediate renewal of humanitarian aid to Gaza. The decision reportedly came under heavy U.S. pressure and amid growing international concerns. It's been 2.5 months without food entering Gaza, this as a way to pressure Hamas to capitulate. The decision came without a cabinet vote, a highly unpopular move among right-wing members of the cabinet. The move was approved during a security cabinet meeting and followed the recommendation of IDF officials, who warned that food supplies belonging to the UN had completely run out. The Prime Minister's office said Israel will allow the entry of a basic quantity of food for the population. This in order to prevent the development of a hunger crisis in Gaza that would endanger the continuing military operation to defeat Hamas.
In Doha, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is reportedly pushing both Israel and Hamas to accept a new U.S. offer for a temporary truce and hostage deal. It's also reported that Israel made a new proposal of its own. More from ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian.
U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff's new proposal calls for a 40 to 60-day pause in fighting in exchange for 10 living hostages. The Witkoff plan also includes a start of a wider agreement to end the war entirely. Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly responded positively to the proposal, while Hamas is still seeking guarantees that a temporary ceasefire would lead to the end of the war. Israel reportedly has its own new proposal that offers an extended ceasefire under which half of the remaining living hostages would be released in exchange for more than 1,000 Palestinian security prisoners arrested following the October 7th massacre. Under the agreement, Hamas would also return the bodies of half of those still held by terrorists. The proposal was reportedly given to Witkoff and the Qatari mediators for consideration. Witkoff reportedly remains determined to strike a deal. He reportedly told families of hostages that he will not allow the strike on Hamas military chief Mohammed Sinwar harm progress in negotiations. Witkoff is quoted saying, "We know how to get an answer from Hamas even after the elimination of Sinwar."
And joining us now to discuss all of this is Colonel in Reserves Miri Eisen from the Institute for Counterterrorism. Thank you, Miri, for joining us.
Thank you, Sivan. Always a pleasure to be here.
Likewise. Miri, we're hearing about the IDF advancing inside Gaza, deploying 5 divisions. What do you think are the primary objectives of this new phase, and how does it differ from the previous military operations?
We're talking about a pre-planned, coordinated 5 divisions. That's already different. I want to remind everybody in October of 2023, when we started a ground operation, it was after 2 weeks of fighting where we still didn't even know how many hostages there were exactly, how many Israelis had been killed in that initial attack of October 7th. So already we're talking about a different scale. 5 divisions is a large amount of troops. We're also talking about entering simultaneously, both in the north and in the south, and as we all heard, also in what I would call the central area of Khan Yunis. So the IDF is activating right now in different areas at the same time, and in larger scale and coordinated. That's different from the past. Having said that, all of the areas that we're operating in as of now are areas that we have been at. We're returning to areas where we went in and we went out, and now we're going in simultaneously pretty much into all of those different areas.
And at the same time, we're hearing U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is reportedly pressing Israel and Hamas to reach a deal. What do you think are the main sticking points for both Israel and Hamas in reaching an agreement?
The first aspect is that Israel is acting right now. Hamas very much wants any kind of negotiation to be done when Israel is not acting against them in our active way. I have to tell you, Sivan, my heart goes out. We're talking right now about the 58 hostages, of which we hope 21, 24 are alive, that they are there and they're inside that same Gaza Strip in those areas that we're attacking. At the end, they're probably held underground in that subterranean arena. But the points of contention between Israel and Hamas are going to be mainly on Israel acting and stating very clearly that we're going to do this under fire, and Hamas saying, no, you have to stop before we'll do anything. And that's been a point of contention for a very long time. I absolutely think that Hamas should not be the one defining the rules of the game. That's not good for anybody. Having said that, they are the ones who hold the hostages. We want those hostages back alive. In the sneak preview, you talked about Eli Cohen, who was executed by the Syrians in 1963, and just now we're getting back some of his artifacts. His bones are still in Syria. We don't want to see any of the hostages turning into something which is hidden and not with us for so many years. And I'd say that those points in that sense, under fire, not under fire, are the main points of contention.
And now the de facto Hamas leader in Gaza, Mohammed Sinwar, has reportedly been killed, and there are basically no more living senior Hamas commanders in Gaza at his level or his brother's level, Yahya Sinwar. Could this finally enable, do you think, a breakthrough for the hostages?
I hope so. Having said that, I'm very aware that Hamas has been an entity, a social movement, an educational extreme voice for so many years. They've raised a decade. They ruled there for over what we would call a generation. They were the rulers in the Gaza Strip from 2007. That's 18 years ago. So sadly, Sivan, we all need to be aware that there are other figures who are going to step in, whoever was close to Mohammed Sinwar, additional figures that we may not have been focused on, that have grown in the last year and a half, and are the ones who are going to continue doing the fighting. So I do hope that it will bring about more of a reasonable idea, but I have to state clearly, Hamas, because its ideology is so extreme, I've never been one of those who thought that through this military pressure, we can actually make them change their mind. I am absolutely for, if you can, try to arrest them. They don't want to be arrested, so you end up killing them in that sense. That doesn't bring anybody home. At the end, you have to have somebody who's going to be the one who says, okay, you can release these people, as has happened in the past. If it's not Mohammed Sinwar, it's going to be somebody else. And again, there is no blueprint that says this is the best way to negotiate with essentially the devil, with a terror organization who prefer to execute our hostages rather than have us rescue them or in any way get near them. And in this kind of a situation, you have to kind of go on it's a very thin rope, and you want to make sure that you don't push them too far. We don't want to see them killing the hostages that we have. We want to make sure that they come back. But at the end of the day, we don't want Hamas and those leaders defining the rules of the game. That's the tricky situation that we're in.
Miri Eisen, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
More than 40,000 people lined the streets of Manhattan for this year's 77th annual Israel Day Parade over the weekend, with this year's theme being Hatikva, or in English, hope. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian has the details.
I just flew in from California to be here. This is my first time at the New York Israel Day Parade. It's amazing, to be surrounded by thousands and thousands of Jewish people, but also allies who stand for Israel and are just celebrating the beautiful country that Israel is. I'm so honored.
Israel and Jewish pride was on full display at the 77th annual Israel Day Parade in Manhattan on Sunday, with floats from dozens of organizations, flags, posters, and more than 40,000 people in the crowd cheering each other on.
Because we're during a time of a lot of anti-Semitism, so I think it's important to fight against anti-Semitism and show our support for Israel.
New York is the largest Jewish community outside of Israel, and thousands of them have direct ties to the war happening inside of Gaza. This year's theme of Hatikva, or hope, reflected on the ongoing war in Gaza, with many participants chanting "Bring them home" and holding signs for the 58 hostages that are still being held by Hamas. Several released hostages marched with the crowd this year, including Aviva and Keith Siegel, who is an American. It also included the families whose loved ones are still being held as hostages inside of Gaza, like Matan Zankauer's family. Their fight to get their loved ones back home comes as the last living American hostage, Don Alexander, was released with the help from the Trump administration last week. As hundreds of NYPD officers line the streets to keep the parade safe, students from schools and dozens of organizations showed off their Israel pride with their own messages. Here's President and CEO of Israel Bonds.
We are here to celebrate Israel Day Parade, but we also celebrate very special achievement of Israel Bonds. For the first time, we are about to hit $5 billion of sales for Israel globally since October 7th. And these funds that we have raised for Israel, if you ask yourself, how can I help Israel? How can I put my money where my mouth is? The best way is to do it through an investment in Israel Bond. By that, you get strong and steady return, and you make immediately an impact in Israel's economy resilience, because the money that we raise goes to Israel, and especially at this time of need, it's really an essential lifeline.
We are so happy to be marching today at the Israeli Day Parade with Israel Bonds. So important to support Israel from anywhere you are, especially America. And we are very excited because in 1 month we're actually going to be moving to Israel. So very important to show support and march.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul also called for the release of the Israeli hostages that have been in captivity for 590 days.
One perspective often overlooked during this war is that of the children, those living through the conflict in Israel and those feeling its ripple effects far beyond. While Israeli children face daily fear and trauma, Jewish children around the world are also grappling with rising anti-Semitism, confusion, and fear in their own communities. Joining me in studio today is Moran Goldschmidt, a woman who has dedicated her work to supporting children and giving them a voice, especially in times like these. She's a child educator, language expert, and passionate Israel advocate. Moran, you and I grew up together abroad, and it's so nice to have you here in studio in Israel with us. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
So right after October 7th, Moran, you launched a special project aimed at supporting the children of Israel, and later this expanded into a kids project globally. Can you tell us about what inspired you to take action so quickly after the traumatizing events of October 7th, and what has this initiative grown into today?
On October 7th, I was in my house in Miami in the United States, and I was just rocked. I was just devastated by what I was seeing. And I knew that I needed to do something. I couldn't just be silent. I had to use my voice, my experience. And so just 2 days after the war started in Israel, I launched a free bilingual English-Hebrew story time on Zoom. And I invited children in Israel. At the time, they were not in school. They were running in and out of bomb shelters, and they were very scared. So I invited them to learn with me. And what started as 5 children in bomb shelters in Israel grew all over the world, from South Africa, from Brazil, from the US, from Canada, from Europe. These children came to learn with me, to share connection and joy in dark days. And it was just a beautiful project that's still ongoing.
Now, you've also been very outspoken about the children's figure, Miss Rachel. You've been talking about how what you described, she has a one-sided narrative of what is going on with this war between Israel and Hamas. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, of course. Miss Rachel is a global figure. She's a child educator around the world, having a platform of more than 10 million mothers and children. And it isn't about what she said, it's more about what she didn't say. In her advocacy, she focuses almost exclusively on children suffering in Gaza. I applaud her efforts and her compassion for Gazan children, but what was missing from this narrative was that Israeli children, Jewish and Muslim and Druze, are suffering too. They're dying, they're living with daily trauma of terrorist attacks and sirens, hostages, their fathers being at war. And I thought that that was very much missing from the picture that she was presenting. But it was also very troubling to me to see that she was portraying the cause of the suffering of the Gazan children exclusively on the Israeli government. She never once talks about Hamas. She doesn't condemn the education that Gazan children receive, the indoctrination that they grow up with, the hate that they're taught from a very young age. And I just felt that that wasn't right. And not only is it not right, but it's very dangerous. And it fuels anti-Semitism in mothers and children around the world. A real teacher, and I work with more than 100 children weekly, focuses and cares and advocates for all children and all students, that all students are worthy of our love and compassion.
Absolutely. Now, you're here in Israel right now. What are you here to do?
I'm back home, you know. I'm Israeli. I'm a proud Jewish woman. I'm here to bear witness, to bring light, to make an impact. I came here to bring joy to children and to inspire Jewish mothers from around the world that came here to Israel on a delegation of mothers through the organization called Momentum. So this week, I will be teaching mothers from all over the world, from Mumbai and South Africa, Australia, Canada, the US, and France. And I'll be teaching them about Jewish pride and Jewish joy so that they can take this amazing inspiration that they feel in the Holy Land back to their homes and their families, their communities, and the world.
If there was one message that you would send over to Jewish parents, as someone who deals, your whole life deals with children, what would that message be?
So I'm a mother myself. I'm a speech and language therapist. I'm an educator, and I work with hundreds of children weekly. And if I can tell parents one thing, it's that right now, in this moment of Jewish history, we have a responsibility to raise strong and proud and connected Jewish children, children that know that they're born with a purpose to bring light into the world. Because when our children are strong and when they're connected, that's the antidote to darkness and the rise of anti-Semitism in the world. When we say, Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives, it's because we're still here and we've survived, we've endured. But we don't just survive and endure. We live, we thrive, we shine to bring light into the world.
So not just to survive, but also to thrive. Moran Goldschmidt, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Israel Bonds, the heartbeat of solidarity, the powerhouse of support. When the Israeli-Hamas war hit, Israel Bonds stood tall, proving we're more than just an investment, we're a lifeline. Israel Bonds pledges to ensure Israel thrives and flourishes. Investing in Israel Bonds isn't just a financial move, it's a declaration for resilience, strength, and a better future for Israel. Join us and let solidarity echo through generations.
In a significant intelligence achievement, Israel's Mossad has retrieved a comprehensive archive of items belonging to the legendary spy Eli Cohen from Syria. The operation, conducted covertly, resulted in the recovery of approximately 2,500 documents and personal items, marking 60 years since Cohen's execution in Damascus. Eli Cohen, who infiltrated the highest ranks of the Syrian government in the early 1960s, provided critical intelligence that greatly aided Israel during the Six-Day War. His deep cover and close relationships with Syrian officials allowed him to gather invaluable information before his capture and execution in 1965. The recovered materials include handwritten letters, photographs, forged passports, and personal belongings, such as the keys to his Damascus apartment. Notably, the archive contains Cohen's original will, penned shortly before his execution, offering a glimpse into his final moments. The materials arrived in Israel shortly before the 60th anniversary of Cohen's execution. He was hanged on May 18, 1965 in Damascus after being exposed as an Israeli intelligence agent who had infiltrated the highest ranks of the Syrian regime. Over the decades, Mossad, in collaboration with domestic and international intelligence and security partners, has undertaken numerous operations, including missions within hostile territories to collect documents and information related to Cohen's espionage activities. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Mossad Director David Barnea presented some of the retrieved items to Cohen's widow, Nadia, during a ceremony in Jerusalem. The operation underscores Israel's enduring commitment to honoring Cohen's legacy and the sacrifices he made for the nation's security. While the recovery of these artifacts provides a measure of closure, the search for Cohen's remains continues. Israel is adamant in its efforts to locate and repatriate his body, ensuring that his service and sacrifice are fully honored. The army says that 5 IDF divisions are now operating in Gaza in what is described as a new stage of war. Dozens of airstrikes pounded Hamas positions as tanks advanced to conquer and hold territory in the Strip. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The stepped-up military operations in Gaza are continuing, with ground operations underway in the north and south of the enclave. Airstrikes on Hamas positions reportedly killed at least 130 people overnight. The IDF hit some 670 Hamas targets over the past week to support Gideon's Chariots, the new ground operation aimed at achieving operational control in parts of the enclave.
צה"ל בהובלת פיקוד הדרום פתח במבצע מרכבות גדעון בהתאם להנחיית הדרג המדיני. אנחנו יוצאים למבצע כדי לממש את כל מטרות המלחמה בעזה. השבת החטופים ומיטוט שלטון החמאס. חשוב להדגיש, אנחנו נדע להתאים את עצמנו לכל התפתחות. אנחנו עוברים שלב בלחימה, ממבצע עוז וחרב למבצע מרכבות גדעון.
The army confirmed that part of the military plan includes the moving of Gazan population from north to south.
המבצע הוא חלק ממלחמת חרבות ברזל. במהלך המבצע נגביר ונרחיב את השליטה המבצעית ברצועת עזה, תוך ביטור הרצועה והנעת האוכלוסייה לשם הגנתה, בכל המקומות בהם נפעל.
The IDF issued evacuation warnings for a Khan Yunis suburb of Deir el-Balach after Hamas rocket fire was directed at Kisufim. In a post, the IDF published a map of the area to be evacuated and said it was a final warning before the IDF carries out strikes there. Amid the renewed IDF offensive, the army is pushing back on unconfirmed reports of a hostage rescue operation in Khan Yunis this morning. Gazan media claims that an IDF special forces team killed a senior terrorist, Ahmed Sarkhan, in a Khan Yunis raid. The troops reportedly entered the city in disguise, including some dressed as women. Prime Minister Netanyahu has ordered the immediate renewal of humanitarian aid to Gaza. The decision reportedly came under heavy U.S. pressure and amid growing international concerns. It's been 2.5 months without food entering Gaza, this as a way to pressure Hamas to capitulate. The decision came without a cabinet vote, a highly unpopular move among right-wing members of the cabinet. The move was approved during a security cabinet meeting and followed the recommendation of IDF officials, who warned that food supplies belonging to the UN had completely run out. The Prime Minister's office said Israel will allow the entry of a basic quantity of food for the population. This in order to prevent the development of a hunger crisis in Gaza that would endanger the continuing military operation to defeat Hamas.
In Doha, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is reportedly pushing both Israel and Hamas to accept a new U.S. offer for a temporary truce and hostage deal. It's also reported that Israel made a new proposal of its own. More from ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian.
U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff's new proposal calls for a 40 to 60-day pause in fighting in exchange for 10 living hostages. The Witkoff plan also includes a